Hey guys, Billy here. I'm a multi-gladiator hunter and I shuffle rank 1. This video is a much requested BM guide for the anniversary patch. I hope you enjoy, and if you do, then please comment, like and subscribe, and if you didn't, well, pretend you did. Feel free to join my Discord and check out my stream, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so I'll start this video off by going over the talents which I'm running, and then I'll go into the honor talents and the hero talents as well. So what you can see on the screen now is what I've been running mostly in arena and what I found the most success with. There are a few things that you can swap out in the hunter tree. For example, if you don't think they're going to go your pets, you can take away a wilderness medicine and say add it to the explosive trap or emergency salve if you think you'll need that. You can also get the scout's instincts if you think you're going to need the kite a lot. Or if you just want the extra bit of crit, you can put it in keen eyesight. And yeah, they're the main ones that I put it in. The only other alternative could be for Scare Beast, but you're not really going to use this unless you're facing a feral, and even then it's not that useful. The other things that you can swap out is Keen Eyesight, where you can swap it for any of the ones I just mentioned, and you could also swap out Serrated Tips if you wish. But in general, I would swap out only these three. The other talents are pretty much locked in. If you really don't want to play Binding Shot, then you could remove this one and put that in one of the other locations which I recommended. But yeah, in general, the talents for the Hunter tree are pretty much set for BM. The only time you wouldn't run with Binding Shot is say you're playing with a Sub Rogue or with a Feral, and then you might not need the Binding Shot because they'd always have cover for you. But even then, it's still nice to have just in case one of their stuns gets immune or they can't help you with the stun. So then it's nice to have a backup stun as well as the intim. As for the BM tree, this has changed quite a lot since the anniversary patch. So the new talents are Barb Scales, Snakeskin Quiver, Cobra Senses, Serpentine Rhythm, and I believe that's all, or at least that's all the ones you run. And Hunter's Prey, this got redesigned a little bit, so it's much better now. So this is the BM tree that I'd recommend running. You can swap out the Thrill of the Hunt and this one for Bloodshed and Venomous Bite, but personally I don't believe this to be worth it, because Bloodshed at the moment isn't that impactful, and it's just another button press that you have to do before you can start doing actual damage. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend playing Bloodshed because the damage you do with pets at the moment from Kill Command isn't that big, because you're mainly dotting with Black Arrow, Barb Shot, and then your pets are doing a lot of the damage with their melees. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend playing Bloodshed at the moment. As for these new talents, I would say play Pack Tactic, just because if you don't have it, your focus regen is very slow. So I wasn't running out of focus that often when I wasn't playing this, but there was a few times when I was, and when you do, it's really punishing. So yeah, I'd always run this now. Barb Scales I don't run because I don't find myself pressing Cobra Shot enough to make this useful. But if you do think that you're going to be pressing Cobra Shot a lot and you need help maintaining the uptime of a Barb Shot, then you could pick this talent instead of say this one. And this one you have a choice, but I prefer Snakeskin Quiver because I find that this procs a lot more than this one would be useful for. Because this one, the focus cost of Cobra Shot isn't that much anyway, and the damage increase by 35% is fine, but it still doesn't deal that much damage. So, whereas this one, this seems to proc quite a lot, because you're auto-shotting quite a lot anyway, and it's just passive damage. So overall, I think this one's much better, because you don't even have to press the global to do the damage from this. As for Serpentine Rhythm, I've tested this. I didn't really like it that much, because the pet damage you gain, 8% after the 4 stacks, it's good, but it's not that substantial, unless you manage to time it up with the burst window, but I think that's quite unrealistic. And yeah, I don't think this is worth taking because there are other talents which I think are better. So yeah, I would play with the Snakeskin Quiver and not the Serpentine Rhythm. As for this, if you want to drop Thrill of the Hunt, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could drop that and get a Sense of Blood. But the reason I wouldn't recommend dropping at the Thrill of the Hunt is because this stacks quite well with the other crit talents. So this one's Serrated Tips and Keen Eyesight giving you crit as well. So in general, even though crit isn't that useful in PvP, you still do have a fair amount as BM. And when you do crit, especially on abilities like Black Arrow or on your kill shot, I mean, I guess it's the same now, but on those abilities, then it does do a lot of damage. As for this, kill shot now strikes one additional target and deals 10% damage for each of your pets. This is Killshot is obviously replaced by Black Arrow, but this means that the Black Arrow will do incredible amounts of damage because it does a lot of damage anyway. So yeah, this is a very, very good talent now. Also, a Murderer of Crows is doing a lot of damage, so I just did a shuffle and I'll show you the overall damage breakdown. So this was the overall, so you can see that Murder of Crows is actually doing a lot of damage now. So yeah, Murder of Crows is actually a useful talent again. So yeah, that's it for the normal talents for BM Hunter for the patch of War Within. Now I'll just do a quick explanation of the Honor talents or PvP talents. These haven't really changed much in the last few years, so this isn't going to be a very long segment of the video, but there is some things you should take in mind. Survival Tactics recently got nerfed, so it's now only 2 seconds instead of 3, but this is still a must pick for almost every comp unless you are certain they're not going to hit you. But yeah, Survival Tactics is extremely good as it basically provides you immunity for 2 seconds after every feigned death. So this has saved me more than once, so yeah, very, very useful talent, and I'd always play this. Kindred Beast still does exactly the same thing, where it makes your freedom a 22 seconds instead of 45. So this is very good if you need a kite. It's also good with your tank pet because it makes the increased health from the pet wall a shorter cooldown as well. So yeah, Kindred is a very useful talent. I run this almost every game as well. And then the third talent I take is Diamond Ice. This is very useful at the moment because of something I'll cover later with Dark Ranger, but a lot of your traps at the moment will be breaking just a passive cleave. So Diamond Ice just ensures that they don't break, and at the moment I would say this is almost a mandatory talent. So the only one that you can really swap out is Kindred Beasts. As for what you could swap it out to, I would either swap it to Chimeral Sting if you don't think you're going to need the short cooldown on the Freedom, and you think that the silence and the reduced healing and movement speed from Chimeral Sting is going to be more useful. I normally run this into, say, a caster, if it was, say, a warlock, where I'm not gonna really need the extra freedom to kite them, but the silence and the slow on them is really nice. The only other talent which I really play in Arena is the Beast Within. This is really good versus Warlock and Priests, because it makes you immune to fear every time you beast your Wrath. It also makes your pets immune, or your main pet at least. So this is good because it'll keep you doing damage, you won't be able to get CC during your burst. So yeah, overall I really like the Beast Within, and you get a bit of attack speed as well. So that's not a bad thing. I guess you could also run Dire Basilisk if you really want, but I've yet to find a situation in which this is useful. I don't think I've played this in the last few years. Oh, and the only other one I have played is Hunting Pack. So I played this versus a warrior where I didn't play the Diamond Ice in 2s, and I went like this. And this was because I didn't think trapping was going to be as important, because it was Holy Pala Fury, so we'd just kite and we'd win eventually anyway. So it just meant that I had a short cooldown on Cheetah and a short freedom, so I wouldn't really take much damage. But in general, a good 3 to always take is these, and then sometimes I'd swap out to Chimera or Beast Within depending on what I'm facing. Now onto the final part of the talents for this video, I'll go over the hero talents. So you've got 2 choices of Dark Ranger and Pack Leader, but you really only have one choice, which is Dark Ranger, because Pack Leader isn't very good, it's not viable. I wouldn't recommend playing it. I tried it a bit, the damage was lackluster, you didn't have the smoke screen. So yeah, in general, don't play Pack Leader. Even after the changes from the anniversary, Dark Ranger is still much, much better. So you've got Black Arrow, which replaces your kill shot, and this deals an incredible amount of damage. You've got the Bell Tolls. So now you can use it on enemies above 80% or less than 20. So it works a bit like Condemned did back in Shadowlands. You've got Dark Chains, which is the only choice here because Shadow Dagger will break traps. So you want to play Dark Chains, and this is whenever you disengage, you will slow the enemies around you until they move away. So yeah, Dark Chains is actually very good, especially for kiting. Bleak Powder, this is going to be getting nerfed, but at the moment it's extremely good because you have Beast Cleave up whenever you Call of the Wild, so whenever you do this, then it deals quite a lot of damage, even a single target. You've got the Withering Fire, so every third Bestial Wrath, you use Render Darkness for 12 seconds, and then if you gain Death Blow, you will fire Withering Arrows at 2 additional targets. This does a lot of cleave damage, so this is a very good talent. Again, this is getting nerfed, but it's still going to be extremely strong damage. Shadow Surge, periodic damage has a chance to deal more damage, basically, and this is a decent talent. It doesn't do insane damage, but it's definitely not bad. Banshee's Mark does crows, and this is good as crows does a lot of damage now. So with this, your crows will be doing about 5% of your overall. This is one of my favourite abilities in the game. So now whenever you use Exil, you get a wall for 3 seconds. And then whenever you use your wall, you get Exil. So they basically pack both abilities into each other. So overall, this is a very, very strong talent. I wouldn't ever run this one because Smokescreen is just way too good because you can Exil before a stun and then you'll likely survive the stun as you have an extra wall for it. So used to play Phantom Pain because it was bugged, but it's no longer bugged, luckily, because that was a disgusting bug. So now everyone has switched to Ebon Bowstring. Ebon Bowstring is just whenever you cast a Black Arrow, you have a 15% chance to get Death Blow, and this allows you to use Black Arrow again. So yeah, this one's definitely better because Phantom Pain overall does about 1% of your damage or less. So yeah, it's not very good at all anymore. Bleak Arrows is your auto shot deals shadow damage, so it bypasses armor and it has a 20% chance to grant Death Blow. Death Blow again, it just lets you cast Kill Shot or Black Arrow. So yeah, this is a very, very good talent. And in general, you'll be doing a lot of damage with the Black Arrow. And then Shadow Hounds, it's every time your Black Arrow deals damage, you get Shadow Hounds and they do damage to the target. So overall, this is how the damage breakdown looks over 6 rounds of a shuffle. So you see Black Arrows is by far the highest damage. Then you've got Pets. And then you've got Murder of Crows. You've got some of the talents, so Shadow Surge. And yeah, overall you do a lot of damage. Okay, so now I'll go over the general spell rotation and priority for BM Hunter after the patch. So your top priority spell is going to be Black Arrow. Then it will be Barb Shot if you need to keep up your Frenzy stacks, or if you are approaching 2 stacks of Barb Shot. Then it's going to be Dire Beast. Then it will be Barb Shots on alternate targets if you just want to cleave. And if you don't want to, then it will be Kill Command. But these two share a very similar priority if you want to do both. Then when you have nothing left to press, it's going to be Cobra Shots. So you don't really cast Cobra Shot that much during a game, as it's going to be by far the lowest priority spell that you have. So now that we've got a general priority list down, I'll go with the opener and the general rotation for BM Hunter in PvP. So the first global you're going to want to press is going to be Black Arrow. The reason for this is that it'll apply it only when they're above 80% health, so you won't have a proc normally from the very start. So yeah, you just want to get it when they're still above 80% health. Then you're going to want to use Call of the Wild, followed by a Bestial Wrath. Then you want to do double Barb Shot, so you get the most from the reset on the Bestial Wrath, and you get your Frenzy stack up quickly. Then you want to press Dire Beast. Then you will press a Barb Shot again. The reason you want to press the Barb Shot again is so you get the 3 stacks of Frenzy. Then you want to go out of the rotation and just follow the priority list. So you'll press Black Arrow as priority, then keep up your stacks of Frenzy with the Barb Shot, and then fill it in with Kill Command, Dire Beast, and then if you have nothing else to press, then you will press your Cobra Shot. So I hope this rotation is helpful, and in general, if you're in doubt, just follow the priority system, and yeah, hopefully that should help you maximize your damage. And if you are wanting to cleave, you can always press your Barb Shot on multiple targets. This is good because you still keep up the stacks and you'll get the dot on multiple targets, and you'll get increased amounts of focus back just due to the Barb Shot giving you focus over the 8 seconds, which it wouldn't do if you put both of them on the same target because it's not separate dots, it just overwrites the previous dot. So yeah, if you are struggling with focus, then multi-targeting Barb Shot can be a very, very good idea. So now I'll do a short section on the gear that I'd recommend for BM Hunter. So I'd run the 4 set with everything aside from the chest, as the stats on the chest are heavy crit and that's not really very good for PvP. For crafting gear, I'd run the neck, which I've got as Haze Versa, and then the 2 rings with the elemental focusing lens embellishment. So what this does is whenever you have a gem, it just deals damage every so often. So yeah, the important thing to know with this is if you have the PvP gem and it's the only one you have in, it will not proc the embellishment. So I was playing this for a while with just the PvP gem, and then I realized that it wasn't actually proccing the embellishment. So yeah, just keep that in mind and make sure that you have a gem that isn't the primary one if you only have 1 gem in it. If you have 2, it doesn't matter, but yeah, just make sure that you are actually proccing the embellishment. And the rings, stat-wise, I've got Haste Verse and Haste Mastery. Overall, I'd recommend going with haste Versa with some mastery built in as well, as the haste scales really well with the dot build which you're currently playing, with Black Arrow and Barb Shot being the majority of your damage. It also increases your pet's attack speed, so yeah, in general, haste is very, very good. And mastery lost a little bit of value due to kill command not hitting as hard as it used to. So yeah, haste is now my favorable stat. As for the rest of the gear, it's all pretty much haste Versa aside from the chest, which I've got as Verse Mastery, the back and the wrists, and the weapon. This is because I started gearing this character before the anniversary patch, so a lot of it was built for before when mastery was better. But I probably will change the wrists and the back around, or maybe the chest, so that I have a little bit more haste. But in general, the stats feel good, the game feels good to play with this amount of haste, and I'll just attack a dummy. I have 23% haste in PvP, and this feels playable. So I wouldn't really need that much more haste than this, but I might get a little bit more Versa. As for enchants, I would recommend going with the Burrowing Rapidity for the back. This just gives movement speed, and that's very useful. I personally go with the Storm Rider's Agility, which increases your agility and increases your movement speed. You can go with the Crystalline Radiance, which just gives you a little bit more agility, but I prefer the extra movement speed. Wrists, I'd recommend going with 1000 speed, as speed is very, very useful in PvP. The weapon enchant, I'd go with the Radiant Power, as this just deals decent overall damage compared to the other enchants. So yeah, this is the best one for PvP. For legs, you go with the one that gives you stamina and agility. For feet, you can go with either Planesrunner's Breeze or Scout's March. Both are very similar, but Planesrunner's Breeze is from not Shadowland, sorry, is from Dragonflight, and it increases the movement speed by the same amount, so it's cheaper. I just went with this one. For rings, you can either go with Curse Mastery or the 315 stats. I went with 315 haste and mastery instead of the curse just because I prefer it, but curse is definitely a very viable alternative. So I hope this helped with the gearing, and overall my stats are 14% crit, 23% haste, 37% mastery, 17% versa, and 10% speed. So I'll just go over the comps which you can currently play as BM Hunter and put them all in a tier list. In S tier, you've got BM plus Feral with a Disc, Holy Pellet, or Mistweaver healing. This is otherwise known as Jungle and is pretty much the main Hunter comp. It's very, very strong and does very high damage and high CC. Then you've got BM and Ellie with a Disc, Holy Pellet, or Mistweaver. This isn't a traditional comp, but at the moment both classes do really high damage, so it's not a bad comp currently. In A tier, you've got BM plus Ret with a Disc, Holy Pellet, or Mistweaver. This is otherwise known as PHP or Cupid. You've then got BM plus Dever with a Disc, Holy Pellet, or Mistweaver. This comp again isn't a traditional comp, but in the past few seasons there has been a lot of success with it, and this comp is still currently very good. Then you have BM plus Shadow Priest with a Holy Pellet or Mistweaver. I wouldn't recommend a Disc with this, as Disc with Shadow Priest doesn't really synergize that well, but with a Holy Pellet or Mistweaver, this comp can be pretty solid. And then for the only B tier comp, you have KFC, which is BM with the Warrior with a Disc, Holy Pellet, or Mistweaver. This isn't as strong as the other comps, but it definitely can work. Okay, so for this next section of the video, I'm going to be going over general tips for BM Hunter. This was suggested to me by one of you guys, and I thought it was a good idea, so I thought I'd include it in the video. So my first tip is to always use Concussive Shot on the healer before you want to try and trap. The reason for this is if you don't have a stun or you can't follow out from any other sort of CC into a trap, it can be really, really hard to trap as the healer can just move away from it. But if they're slow, they're going to have a much harder time doing this. Also with Concussive Shot, always keep this on 1 DPS that you're trying to kite away from. The reason for this is it makes it much easier to move away from them as they'll be slowed, so you'll take less damage overall. For the second tip, it's going to be using Tar Trap on cooldown. The reason for this is that whenever an enemy procs your Tar Trap, they're going to be rooted for 4 seconds until damage breaks it, but they're still rooted for normally quite a while. And this will greatly reduce the amount of upturn that they have on you, and it will force them to use their mobility to connect to you. So when they are connected to you, you can then walk away, and they're going to have a much harder time getting back to you. For the third tip, it's going to be using Binding Shot to either stun DPS or the healers, and having an Act Cursor macro for it. So I've got an Act Cursor macro, so it'll just do whatever my cursor is at the time. And Binding Shot is extremely powerful, because it can be used to stun multiple enemies. So for example, if there's a melee cleave on you or a healer, you can use the binding shot, and this can make it so you get some distance away from them, or perhaps land a kill if they can't use a defensive. It can also be very useful on a healer, as it will stun them if you don't have Intim, so you can use it to get a trap. The one disadvantage of Binding Stun over Intim is that Binding Shot can be dispelled, but even then it's still a global that they have to press, so it's not the end of the world. One thing to note with Binding Shot though is that it does exist on the ground, so don't use it if, say, everyone's stacking and one of them is on DR and you need that DR to kill later, because then if they go into the Binding Shot and they proc it on themselves, it will be DR and it will reset the DR. So it just takes a bit of awareness of when to use Binding Shot, but overall it's a very, very strong ability. Next, using Scatter wisely is very important. So Scatter is an in-cap, and it's a 3-second in-cap similar to Trap, and it does DR with your Trap. So you want to use your Scatter normally on the off DPS. The reason for this is it stops them peeling the main target, especially say like a Shadow Priest or a Warrior that could intervene. So it's definitely worth using Scatter and using it wisely. You can use it to trap, but in general it's better to use a stun to trap because it will DI your freezing trap, especially when you play Diamond Ice. It then makes the freezing trap not very long. But if you have to, scatter trapping isn't a bad idea. But yeah, in general, always try and stun trap instead of scatter trapping. The next tip is going to be always pair up your freedom with your disengage. The reason for this is that whenever you disengage, you get post haste, which gives you a 50% movement speed. So you've not only have you already gotten the 20 yards distance which you disengage from the enemy, but you've also now got a speed boost. And Master's Call will make it so you can no longer be slowed, as you'll have a freedom. So this means that you'll be able to get a lot of distance away from the enemy without them being able to slow you, so it's very, very useful for kiting. Especially if you play Kindred Beasts, because then your freedom CD is going to be 22.5 seconds, so you basically have it for every disengage anyway. The next tip is going to be use Aspect of the Turtle at high health. The reason for this is that if you turtle and you're 5% health, you can still die to stuff like dots, or the Asa Rogue sudden demise if you have dots on you. Okay, so we've just got a few more tips, and that is try and always get your CC every 30 seconds on DR. The reason for this is that Hunter relies a lot on just doing damage and getting CC, so if you're able to regularly get your trap on cooldown, then it means you're going to have a lot more pressure and have a much easier time control in the game, as when you're playing Hunter, if you're trying to come from behind, it's much more difficult than if you have the pressure already and you're in the driving seat. The next tip is to use your CDs early and not be afraid to use them, as if you use them early, you'll take less damage overall and the enemy will get less pressure, and therefore your healer can save CDs. You're also much less likely to overlap CDs, especially in solo shuffle. This next tip is to always use Roar of Sacrifice at high health. This is because it prevents crits, so if you use it low, it won't make a difference as a normal hit would kill you anyway, regardless of whether it crits. The final tip I can give you guys is to always try and maximize the amount of damage that you deal. The reason for this is it makes it much more likely for the healer to have to use their cooldowns, it makes it much more likely for the DPS to panic use their cooldowns, especially in shuffle, and you might have them overlap instead. And that's really, really good because then it puts you in the driving seat so you have more pressure. And as a hunter, when you have pressure, the game is much easier as you'll be able to land CC, and this will force more misplays from the enemy. So yeah, if you maximize your damage, you'll find yourself winning a lot more games, as ultimately, if you don't do damage, then you're not going to kill anybody, and you're not going to win any games. So yeah, always maximum focus on doing the maximum DPS that you can. So because I'm making this video on the Saturday, we have just received like the blue post that there are going to be nerfs to BM Hunter, but I don't think they're going to be that impactful. So on screen is a damage breakdown from a single target, or damage onto a single person. So damage was onto a Warlock. And the nerfs are going to be Barbed Hook damage reduced by 25%, Stomp damage increased by 50%, and then Bleak Powder's damage reduced by 30%, and that it will no longer proc on the main target, and Withering Fire's additional black arrows are cast at 25% instead of 50%. So I did some math with this, and worked out that Barbed Hook is going to be minus about 1.7 million from the single target here. Stomp is going to be plus 1.5 million. And Black Powder, this is quite hard to tell because I wasn't sure exactly what was on, like, cast on the main target. But for now, I'm just going to assume that it's going to be minus basically all of it, so minus 1 million. So single target from the 41 million damage is going to be about minus 1.2 million. So overall, this is about a 3% single target nerf. Again, this might differ a little bit from game to game, but overall, I'd say single target isn't going to be really that affected, and it might be between 1 and 4% depending on the games, but I don't think single target is going to be that much of an issue. The place where the nerf will affect is if you're doing damage onto multiple targets, as Barbershot was a majority of your damage, but I think overall you'll still do a very high amount of damage, but it probably is going to be about 5 to 10% overall nerf, but it's not been possible to sim that at the moment. But yeah, when we see that, I will update next week when the nerfs are live. But yeah, overall, I wouldn't be that worried about the nerfs. I don't think they're going to be that impactful, as you did crazy amounts of damage as a BM hunter. So yeah, this is from a shuffle from today, which I'm just going to open now. So you can see that this is before nerfs, but I'm still doing crazy amounts of damage. So even if overall this is a 10% nerf, I'm still going to be 30 million above the second DPS. So yeah, I really wouldn't worry about these nerfs. I don't think they're going to be that impactful at all. I think BM is still going to be, if not S plus tier, maybe S or A plus. So yeah, you don't need to panic with these nerfs. BM will still be viable. I'll also do a section now on the add-ons which I use and what I'd recommend to you guys. So I like Arena Anti-Malware because this hides the 3 red Blizzard frames. I'm not really a fan of them, and this hides them. Big debuffs, very important because this shows stuns on your frame. So here, if I was stunned, it would have the intim icon here. So if I can do it here to the dummy, you'll see the intim icon on the dummy there. I think that's really helpful, especially for noticing debuffs, and really helps me at least. Then I like to go with details just to see the overall damage that you're doing. Diminish, this helps show the DRs that you're on. So if you see that you're coming off of a DR soon, you'll know where to position. And perhaps if you want to pre-use the defensive, it's really helpful to have this. Then I use Gladiator Losser because this personally helps me. I know a lot of people don't like it and you do have to customize it a little bit, but this is like DBM or Bigwigs for PvE, and it just tells you, what the enemy are pressing. And yeah, I personally think this is very helpful. Some people don't like it, but for me, I would recommend this. Then I use Gladius, and I use this to track trinkets and DRs, just because I prefer this to S Arena, but I do use S Arena as well, and I'll explain why in a sec. So I also have mixed scrolling battle text. This is mainly for you guys, and when I'm making videos, just so I can see what does a lot of damage. Yeah, that's not essential at all. Nug totem icon, this displays an icon next to a totem, makes them slightly easier to press. I really like this add-on. Omnibar, this is almost essential, as this can be used to track the enemy cooldowns. You can customize it to however little or as much as you want. I would say try and have as least buttons as you can to track, and track the important things, as realistically you don't need to know a lot of the enemy cooldowns, but some are definitely nice to have. So for example, kicks, knowing when priests have death, fade, that sort of stuff. This add-on is very, very important. OmniCC, this is just for countdowns on all of my spells. I personally like this, but it's not essential at all. OmniCD is very important, and if there was someone in my party, it would allow me to track their spells, so I could see when they have stuff off cooldown, and I can see what my healer still has, or what my second DPS has. And especially in Shuffle, this is good, because if they have nothing, and potentially you could save them, then you'll be able to do that. Whereas if you don't know what they have, well, you'll have no idea if you could have saved them or not. And especially in Shuffle as well for yourself, it's good to know what your healer has. So if you see your healer has no trinket and no cooldowns, then you'll need to know that you need to use next, rather than them using. Next, I have Reflex. This just allows you to see the past arena games. Again, not essential, but quite nice to have. S Arena is what I use to see cast bars because I prefer them to the Gladius cast bars. That's the only reason I use S Arena, is just to see the enemy cast bars. Spell notifications shows me in the middle of my screen what I've dispelled. So for example, when I trank shot, I can see exactly what buff I dispel. And then weak auras, these are very useful as I use this for tracking my barb shot stacks. But you can play without this if you want, but I would definitely recommend to have them. And you can also have it for certain enemy cooldowns, so I have it for like True Shot and certain important cooldowns that you might not necessarily miss, but it's good to know for sure when they've been popped, as often you'll have to trade a defensive when they are used. So yeah, that's all the add-ons that I use, and yeah, let me know what add-ons you use, and if you have anything else that you would recommend. Potentially I could try some more, although I am quite happy with what I have currently. So for the final section of this video, I'm just going to give you guys an overall TLDR, what I think of BM Hunter after the anniversary patch. I would say that BM Hunter is in S tier right now, along with Feral and Ellie, and it's extremely viable in almost every comp. So as a hunter at the moment, you have a lot of defensive cooldowns with Survival of the Fittest, Roar of Sacrifice, Exhilaration, and a Turtle. Then for CC, you have a decent amount with Intim, Scatter, Trap, and Binding Shot. You're also able to kite really well because you don't have any casts, so you don't actually have to cast anything. You can use Master's Call and Disengage on a short cooldown. And because you're not casting, you're able to just do everything while moving, so you can just constantly be moving away from the enemy DPS and towards the enemy healer. And finally, you have insane damage, so you're often able to force cooldowns even when you don't have your own cooldowns up, just because of how high your sustained damage is. Well, that's all for this video, and I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of it, and if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. I hope you have a great day. Peace out.